The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wider than any structure humanity had ever built. Its walls curved upward like the inside of a massive shell, covered in metals that changed color when light touched them. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, each one shaped differently to hold the strange bodies of different species. The air itself seemed to hum with importance, thick with the weight of decisions that had shaped the galaxy for 100,000 years. Ambassador settled her four legs beneath her body and watched the entrance doors with mild curiosity. The diplomat had seen many new species present themselves to the council. They always came the same way: nervous, humble, eager to please. Young civilizations understood their place in the order of things, and that place was at the bottom, waiting for permission to rise. The species called humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 18 cycles ago. By galactic standards, they were infants taking their first steps. The Council had dispatched observation drones to their home system almost immediately, as they did with all emerging civilizations. The reports had been interesting but not alarming. A single planet called Earth, a history of conflict among themselves, rapid technological development, nothing unusual for a young species finding its footing. The invitation to appear before the Council was standard procedure. Come and be assessed, prove your worth, accept guidance from those who had walked the stars before your ancestors climbed down from trees. High Arbiter Heel, ancient and pale, stood at the center of the chamber. Her species had founded the Council 200,000 years ago, and she carried that legacy in every slow movement of her elongated body. She raised one thin arm, and the chamber fell silent. "The delegation from Earth may enter," she announced. Her voice carried to every corner by technology so old no one remembered how it worked. The great door slid open. Expected what she always saw: diplomats in formal clothing, perhaps trembling slightly at the grandeur around them. Scientists with recording devices, trying to capture everything for study. Maybe a cultural or two, ready to explain their species' customs in careful, apologetic tones. What walked through those doors was none of those things. There were 12 of them, moving in a formation that spoke of military precision. 10 wore armor that covered them from head to foot, thick plates of metal painted in dark colors. The armor bore marks that recognized with a start: plasma scoring, kinetic impacts, the kind of damage that came from real combat, not training exercises. The two at the front wore no armor, only simple clothing in dark colors. One was a male, tall and broad, with gray hair cut short and eyes that moved constantly, watching everything. The other was a female, shorter but somehow more present. A scar ran down the left side of her face, pulling at the corner of her eye. She walked like she owned the chamber already. Whispers spread through the assembled delegates. This was not how new species presented themselves. This was not humble or eager or nervous. The human female stopped at the edge of the central platform and looked up at High Arbiter Heel. She did not bow. She did not kneel. She simply looked, with the calm patience of someone who had all the time in the universe. "I am Director," she said. Her voice was clear and steady. "I speak for the United Earth Coalition." High Arbiter Heel tilted her head, a gesture of acknowledgement that carried no warmth. "Director, you stand before the Galactic Council, the governing body of 300 civilizations across 50,000 star systems. We have observed your species since your first successful faster-than-light test. We have many questions." "Ask them," Director said. A delegate rose from his seat, his feathered crest flaring with agitation. "You bring soldiers to a diplomatic assembly. This is highly irregular. The council chamber is a place of peace." Director glanced at the armored figures behind her. "These are my advisors. They advise me on matters of security. Given what happened at 442, I thought it prudent to be cautious." The name meant nothing to most of the council, but noticed several delegates stiffen. She searched her memory and found the reference. 442 was a star system on the edge of what humans claimed as their territory. More importantly, it was near the border of the Dominion. High Arbiter Heel raised one hand for silence. Explain this reference. Certainly, Director said. 3 years ago, by our calendar, a human colony ship entered the 442 system to establish a settlement on the fourth planet. Our surveys indicated the system was uninhabited. We were wrong. She paused, and something cold passed through her eyes. A patrol fleet was waiting. They destroyed our ship without warning. 12,000 civilians died in the first hour. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Dominion was a known power, aggressive but not stupid. They respected strength and took what weakness offered. Attacking a colony ship was bold, even for them. This is a serious accusation, the High Arbiter said. Do you have evidence? Director gestured to the tall man beside her. He stepped forward and produced a small device that projected images into the air above the platform. The delegates watched footage of the attack, ships that bore the unmistakable design of their weapons flashing. A human vessel, massive and slow, breaking apart under sustained fire. Escape pods being targeted and destroyed one by one. The chamber fell completely silent. We logged everything, Director continued. Every transmission, every weapon signature, every death. The commander broadcast a message during the attack. He said that humans should learn their place, that the stars belong to the strong and we were not strong. She let those words hang in the air for a long moment. We disagreed with his assessment. A delegate, her body shifting between solid and gas as her species did when agitated, spoke up. What do you mean by that? What did you do? Director smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We responded. The Dominion has been a galactic power for 40,000 years, the High Arbiter said slowly. They control over 1,000 star systems. Their fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands. What possible response could a species' 18 cycles into space travel mount against such a force? A decisive one. Director nodded to her companion again. New images appeared in the air. Star charts, fleet movements, battle reports marked with dates and casualty numbers. In the 3 years since the 442 massacre, humanity has taken 17 star systems previously held by the Dominion. We have destroyed or captured over 400 of their warships. Their commanding admiral is dead, along with most of his senior staff. The worlds they used as forward bases are now human colonies. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over each other in a dozen languages. Some called for order. Others demanded proof. Several sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just heard. Felt her stomach twist in a way she had not experienced in centuries. She had studied them extensively. They were brutal and efficient, apex predators who had never met anything that could seriously challenge them. The idea that a species barely out of its cradle could defeat them in open warfare was simply not possible. And yet the evidence hung in the air, undeniable. High Arbiter Heel took a long time to restore order. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried a new note, something that might have been caution. You are telling this council that in 18 cycles, you have achieved faster-than-light travel, established multiple colonies, and waged a successful war against one of the oldest military powers in the galaxy. Yes. How? Director looked around the chamber at the hundreds of delegates staring down at her. She seemed completely unaffected by their attention, by the grandeur of the space, by the weight of history pressing in from all sides. We are humans, she said simply. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day we existed. Everything we have, we earned. Every advantage we hold, we took from something that wanted to destroy us. We did not reach the stars by being careful or patient or humble. She turned slowly, meeting as many eyes as she could. The thought we were prey. They were wrong. We have never been prey. We have always been predators wearing the skin of something softer. We learned to smile and cooperate and build civilizations, but underneath all of that, we are what our planet made us. Survivors, fighters. the children of a world soaked in blood. Director faced the High Arbiter again. We did not come here to ask for membership in your council. We came to inform you that humanity is now a power in this galaxy, whether you acknowledge it or not. We will continue to expand. We will continue to grow. And anyone who tries to stop us will learn the same lesson they are still learning. She paused. We do not lose, we do not surrender, we do not stop, ever. The chamber sat in absolute silence. Realized she was holding her breath. She had witnessed 1,000 delegations present themselves to the council, and never once had she seen anything like this. This was not a request for acceptance. This was a statement of fact, delivered with the confidence of someone who had already won every fight that mattered. High Arbiter Heel stared down at the human delegation for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. The Council will need time to verify your claims and discuss the appropriate response. You will be given quarters in the diplomatic wing. We will reconvene in 3 cycles. Director nodded once, neither grateful nor dismissed. We'll be waiting, she said. Then she turned and walked out, her soldiers falling into formation around her, leaving the greatest governing body in the galaxy speechless in her wake. The murmurs started again, but barely heard them. She was watching the doors close behind the humans, thinking about what she had just witnessed. In all her long years, she had never seen a delegation leave the council chamber walking taller than when they entered. These humans, she realized, had not been intimidated at all. They had been sizing up the competition. The days that followed Director's appearance before the council were chaos wrapped in protocol. Delegates who normally spent their time in boring discussions about trade routes and mineral rights suddenly found themselves facing something none of them had prepared for. A new power had risen, and it refused to follow the rules everyone else had followed for 100,000 years. Spent most of those days in meetings. They had maintained careful records of every species they had ever encountered, and now everyone wanted access to those records. What did they know about humans? What had their observation drones reported? What threats had they identified? The answers were not comforting. Humans, the records showed, were an unusual species even before they reached the stars. Their home planet was classified as a Category 4 death world, meaning it actively tried to kill its inhabitants through extreme weather, predators, disease, and natural disasters. Most intelligent species evolved on gentle worlds where survival was easy and cooperation was rewarded. Humans evolved on a planet where everything was trying to eat them, poison them, or crush them under falling rocks. This had made them aggressive in ways the galaxy rarely saw, but more importantly, it had made them adaptable. When faced with a problem, humans did not wait for a perfect solution. They improvised. They experimented. They threw everything they had at the obstacle until something worked. They had made a mistake that seemed obvious in hindsight. They had assumed humans would respond to aggression the way other species did, with fear, with caution, with a desire to negotiate from a position of weakness. Instead, humans had responded with fury. The Council spent 2 days reviewing the evidence Director had provided. Intelligence officers from a dozen species analyzed the footage, the star charts, the battle reports. They all came to the same conclusion. It was real, all of it. Humanity had not just defended itself against they had launched a campaign of revenge that bordered on systematic destruction. Every military installation in the contested region had been attacked. Every patrol fleet had been hunted down. The human strategy was not about gaining territory or resources. It was about sending a message. Do not touch us, the cost will be too high. What disturbed the analysts most was the speed of it all. The attack on the colony ship had happened 3 Earth years ago. In that time, humans had built a war fleet from almost nothing, developed tactics specifically designed to counter advantages, and executed a campaign across 17 star systems without a single major defeat. that had spent 40,000 years becoming one of the galaxy's great powers. Humanity had broken them in 3 years. Attended the emergency session called by the Military Affairs Committee. Representatives from species with significant military forces gathered to discuss what this new development meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. The mood was tense. "We must consider the possibility of containment," a general said. His species was known for its conservative approach to security. "If humans can do this they could do it to anyone. We should establish a quarantine zone around their territory before they expand further." "And how do you propose to enforce such a quarantine?" another delegate asked. "They tried to stop them with superior numbers and superior technology. It did not work. They were overconfident. They underestimated their enemy. And you think we would not make the same mistake?" The argument went back and forth for hours. Some wanted to treat humanity as a threat to be contained. Others argued that any attempt at containment would simply turn humans against the Council, creating exactly the enemy they feared. A few delegates suggested trying to bring humanity into the Council as allies, reasoning that it was better to have such a dangerous species inside the tent than outside it. Listened to all of it and said nothing. She was thinking about Director, about the look in that woman's eyes when she described the attack on the colony ship. There had been anger there, certainly, but also something colder, something calculating. Humans did not just react to threats. They planned, they prepared, they thought ahead. What plans, she wondered, had Director already made for this exact situation? On the third day, the full council reconvened. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Species that rarely bothered attending council sessions had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Director walked in exactly as she had before. Same formation, same confident stride, same complete lack of visible concern about the hundreds of powerful beings staring down at her. High Arbiter Heel opened the session with a formal statement acknowledging that the Council had humanity's claims. The war with they was real. The victories were real. The 17 conquered systems were now under human control. "The Council must now decide how to proceed," the High Arbiter said. "We have several options before us. The delegation from Earth is invited to speak." Director stepped forward. "Before we discuss options, I would like to share some additional information." The chamber grew very still. "Our intelligence services have been monitoring communications within the Council since our arrival. We know about the emergency meetings. We know about the discussions of containment and quarantine zones. We know that several species have already begun repositioning their fleets closer to our borders." The silence became something heavier, something dangerous. "I want to be clear about something," Director continued. "We did not come here to threaten anyone. We did not come here to start a war. We came here to establish diplomatic relations with civilizations we hope can become our partners. But we are not stupid and we are not naive." She paused to let those words sink in. "If the Council decides to treat humanity as an enemy, we will respond accordingly. We have spent the last 3 years preparing for exactly that possibility. Our analysts have studied your military capabilities. Our strategists have identified weaknesses in your defensive networks. Our factories have been building ships and weapons designed specifically to counter the technologies represented in this chamber." Director looked around the room with the same calm expression she had worn since she first entered. "We do not want a war with the Galactic Council, but if you force us into one, you should understand what you are choosing. We are not arrogant or slow or predictable. We are the species that conquered our own death world, and we will not be contained by anyone." The threat hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Realized she was gripping the arms of her seat so tightly that her claws had left marks in the ancient metal. She forced herself to relax, but her hearts were racing. This was not diplomacy. This was something closer to a declaration of terms. High Arbiter Heel raised one trembling hand. You speak of war as if it is inevitable. Is that your intention? To intimidate the council into accepting you through fear? Director shook her head. No, I speak of war because I believe in honesty. You are all trying to decide what to do about humanity. Some of you see us as a threat. Some of you see us as an opportunity. Some of you are probably terrified right now, and others are already calculating how to use us against your rivals. She smiled, and for a moment she almost looked friendly. I am simply giving you all the information you need to make an informed decision. If you choose to be our enemies, we will destroy you. If you choose to be our friends, you will find no more loyal allies in the galaxy. The choice is yours. She stepped back, folding her hands behind her back in a posture of patient waiting. Take all the time you need. The vote took 6 cycles. In the history of the Galactic Council, no decision had ever been debated so fiercely or so publicly. Species that had been allies found themselves on opposite sides. Trade agreements that had stood for 10,000 years were threatened. Military alliances shifted and reformed as different factions tried to build support for their positions. Watched it all with growing unease. She had served as a diplomat for over 300 years, and she had never seen the council so divided. The humans had walked into the chamber and somehow turned the entire galactic order upside down, simply by existing. The containment faction argued loudly for quarantine. Humanity was too dangerous to let roam free, they said. Look at what they had done Look at the threats their director had made. These were not civilized beings. These were predators who would consume everything in their path if not stopped. But the integration faction pushed back just as hard. They had started the war, they pointed out. Humanity had simply finished it, and Director had been very clear that humans did not want conflict with the Council. Why create an enemy when you could create an ally? Found herself caught between both sides. She understood the fear. She felt it herself when she looked at Director's cold eyes, but she also understood the logic of the integration argument. Humanity was already a power in the galaxy. The only question was whether they would be a power inside the Council or outside it. On the 4th day of debates, something unexpected happened. A new delegation arrived from the edge of Council space. 3 officials, their ceremonial armor dented and scorched, demanded an emergency audience with the High Arbiter. What they reported changed everything. The war with humanity was not going well. In the time since Director had arrived at the Council, human forces had captured 6 more star systems. The home fleet had been forced to retreat from positions it had held for 15,000 years. Their losses were mounting faster than they could replace them, and morale was collapsing across their entire military structure. They were not coming to demand that the Council intervene against humanity. They were coming to beg for peace. Was present when the delegation met with Director. The contrast was striking. The officials were clearly terrified, their movements jerky and uncertain. Director sat across from them with the relaxed posture of someone holding all the cards. You want the war to end, she said. It was not a question. The senior official, an old warrior whose name translated roughly to Blade of Stars, bowed his head. We do. The Dominion recognizes that it acted incorrectly at 442. We are prepared to offer compensation for the lives lost. We are prepared to recognize human territorial claims. We ask only that the attacks stop. Director studied him for a long moment. Your people killed 12,000 civilians. Men, women, children. Families who wanted nothing more than to build new lives among the stars. Your commander broadcast their deaths across multiple frequencies. He called it a lesson. Blade of Stars said nothing. There was nothing to say. I am going to offer you mercy, Director continued. Not because you deserve it, but because we are tired of killing. The war ends today. You withdraw from every system within 50 light years of our borders. You pay reparations calculated by our economists. You provide full records of your military capabilities to our intelligence services. She leaned forward. And you tell every species in this galaxy what happened when you attacked us. You tell them what we did to you. You tell them that humanity does not forget and humanity does not forgive. But humanity can be reasoned with if approached correctly. She stood up. Do we have an agreement? Blade of Stars stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pressed his forehead to the floor in the deepest gesture of submission his species knew. We have an agreement, he said. News of the surrender spread through the council within hours. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every argument the containment faction had made suddenly looked foolish. Humanity had defeated thee in open war and then offered them terms instead of annihilation. They were dangerous, yes, but they were also rational. They could be dealt with. The final vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with full rights and responsibilities. They would be allowed to maintain their current territory and expand through normal colonization procedures. In exchange, they agreed to abide by Council regulations regarding contact with pre-species and to participate in the mutual defense treaties that held the galactic peace together. Director accepted the decision with the same calm she had shown throughout. She made no triumphant speeches. She offered no gloating remarks about her species' victory. She simply nodded, shook the High Arbiter's hand, and began discussing the practical details of integration. Approached her after the ceremony, driven by a curiosity she could not ignore. Director, may I ask you something? The human turned to face her. Up close, the scar on her face was even more striking. It looked like a claw mark, deep and old. Of course, Ambassador. Why did you offer the peace? After what they did to your people, you could have destroyed them completely. No one would have blamed you. Director was quiet for a moment. Because we are not monsters, she finally said. We are capable of terrible things when threatened, yes, but we are also capable of mercy, of understanding, of choosing to build rather than destroy. She looked out at the vast chamber, still crowded with delegates discussing the day's events. They learned their lesson. They will not threaten us again. And now every other species in this galaxy knows what we can do and what we choose not to do. That is worth more than any amount of revenge. She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. We came from a death world, Ambassador. We evolved surrounded by things that wanted to kill us. But we also evolved the ability to cooperate, to trust, to build communities that lasted longer than any individual. That is our real strength. Not our violence, but our ability to choose when to use it and when to put it away. Consider this. And if the Council had voted to contain you, what would you have done then? Director's smile faded slightly. Then we would have done what we always do when someone tries to stop us. We would have survived, we would have adapted, and eventually we would have won. She offered her hand, and after a moment of hesitation took it. But I am glad, Director said, that it did not come to that. I meant what I said about wanting allies, not enemies. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders we have not yet seen. I would rather explore it with friends than conquer it alone. Felt something shift in her understanding of this strange species. They were dangerous, yes, violent and unpredictable and capable of terrible things, but they were also something else, something that might, with careful cultivation, become something beautiful. Welcome to the Council, she said. Director squeezed her hand once firmly. Thank you, Ambassador. I think this is the beginning of something interesting. As watched the human delegation depart, she found herself thinking about the future. For 100,000 years, the galaxy had been governed by careful species, species that planned in centuries and moved in. Now a new player had arrived, one that thought in years and moved in days. Everything was about to change. And somehow, despite all her fears, found herself looking forward to seeing what happened next.